This is Eye on the Community, and I'm your host, Sean Anthony. Joining me next is Mr. Chris Suel, who served as Meta's Community Development Regional Manager, formerly Facebook, where he was responsible for external community relations and corporate social responsibility initiatives. Now he's here to discuss the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. Life is better with you here. Chris Suel, welcome to the program, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be a part of this conversation with you.
Excellent. It's a pleasure to have you, man. So let's talk about mental health. I mean, it's a topical conversation now. It really stretches on all demographics, ages, doesn't matter what ethnicity. Chris, what does mental health mean to you?
I think mental health for me is more internal in terms of rationalize, peace. When you think about mental health, I think it varies from person to person. Most of all, for me, it means peace, being able to, do my day-to-day things without the stresses and things that I do on a regular. But I think as men, we have to be accountable what mental health looks like for us individual, right? And when those moments creep up on us, how do we start to deal with them in a way that allows us to be the providers that we are for our families, to be the fathers, to be the community people that people look to. And so for me, mental health means peace, so that I can, live my life daily.
Yeah, I agree, man. Look, we've all had challenges. I know I have had challenges dealing with the loss of family members, friends, and you know finances over the years. As a high value man, have you ever struggled with your mental health personally?
Absolutely. I think it came around 2008, 2009, when I was experiencing, just like what you said, I was going through a situation where I really had no finances, had no car, no job, living with my mother. And my mother at the time was giving me $100 a week so that I can be sustainable. And me, wanting to make more money, I went and gambled $100 at the casino, hoping that I could make more money so that I didn't have to keep asking my mom for money. And at the time, I was losing that money. And so for me, I started those life worries started to happen. And I almost committed suicide because I was dealing with depression and I really saw no way out. And so I thought that it'd be easier to kind of take the burden on my family if I just went ahead and, into my own life. Thankfully, I'm still here, but I dealt with that. And as most men do, it's hard to look at ourselves and not see the tough persona that the society tells us we have to be. And so for me, that was one of the moments where I was dealing with, some real mental challenges where it almost cost me my life.
Wow. So, how did you manage to turn the corner towards a solution focused resolution?
Well, I think one of the things that I did was lean into my faith more, because that was really one of the first signs that I had really, where they really had talked about, I guess forms of depression. And I started to ask myself, am I depressed? And I think that was one of the first steps in going forward into looking at steps to recovery in terms of how do I, figure out how to get this thing under control. I think one of the other things I did was I seek counseling. I've been in counseling now since 2012 and it's 2024. So going on, almost 10 plus years. But then also too, I told them I was transparent with my family. And I think that's one of the harder parts that we have to talk about is, we oftentimes think that either depression or committing suicide is a burden that we carry when we carry it by ourselves. But being honest with my family and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? I found that I had more support from my family than I ever thought I did. And I think those three things helped me get to a place where I am now. We're talking about counseling, we're talking about the family support, and then we're also talking about, leaning into my faith. So those are the three things that helped me get to a much better place where I am now.
Excellent. Just a side note, what would you recommend for men as a counselor when they're in those stages? Would you recommend another man or a woman, or would you suggest is best based on their personal preference?
I think based on your personal preference, I think that the good thing is now is that we know we have all of these resources available to us that allows us to choose the best counsel for us. Some of them people may want somebody that is faith based. For me, I've had several different counselors, each one being good, but I think the one that has worked with me the best here lately is a woman, and I think because she holds me accountable for some of the decisions that I make, but also too she gives me tangible things to take away from my counseling. And I'll give you a tidbit. One of the best things that I realized that she did while we were in counseling is the first day I walked in, she asked me to express myself using feelings. Now, when you talk to men and you ask them to tell how they're feeling, oftentimes we give thoughts. And she had to help me separate the two. She was like, "No, you're giving me thoughts." I need you to actually tell me how you feel. And what she did was she gave me a sheet of paper with feelings on them. Some of them I didn't even know existed, but what it did was it started to help me, one, internalize, but then two, articulate how I was feeling as a man, because for so long I felt like telling how I felt made me vulnerable. In reality, vulnerability is what allow us men to get over some of those things I were feeling that may, transition to depression or even oftentimes suicidal thoughts.
Interesting. So now fast forward, now that you've got the support, you've gone through counseling, how do you cope with life's ups and downs now?
So I come from a family of readers. My grandmother was a reader. My mom is still an avid reader. I'm a reader. And so when I think about, those books that allow me to take my mind off of things, but also development books, they allow me to help me grow in spaces where I identified as gaps. And so I read a lot of books for myself and self-improvement, also work out a lot. And then most recently here, I've been looking at getting back or getting into music. I love music, but I also never got a chance to play instruments when I was younger. And so picking up those type of hobbies that kept when those moments creep up where I am feeling down, because I still have my moments where I feel down, I pick up the three things I love to do the most. And so I'm learning now to kind of play the saxophone. And so those are the three things that I currently do when I start to feel myself or those thoughts start to creep up, or I'm kind of in the mood. I dig into my treasure chest and find those things that allow me to take my mind over some of those life stressors.
Excellent. I love that. The arts is always a way for people to express themselves, through an instrument or some form of creativity. Before we conclude, Mr. Chris, I really appreciate this conversation. Are there any resources for people that you would like to share, websites and things like that?
Yeah, the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation is one of the organizations I worked with in the past. They're a great resource because they also have the opportunity to list, therapists, counselors, but also resource to help people that are honestly going through something that they might not be ready to talk with their family. But I also would say too, the community. There's a ton of things in our community that allow us, as not as Black men, to help us move forward, so that when we're feeling down, we have tangible things at our disposal to use. This campaign is a life is better what you hear campaign, which signifies us still being present, and not making a decision to commit suicide. And so, anybody that's going through it, I hope that you have the support family wise to be able to tell them the truth of how you're feeling, because I think that family will lean in more if you tell them how you feel. And so I hope that they use that to the best of their abilities.
Excellent. Well, I definitely appreciate you sharing this information. The Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, Life is Better with You here. Chris Sewell, we definitely appreciate you sharing this on the Community.
Yes,
Take
sir.
care.